I love conspiracy theories. Three of my all-time conspiracy theories are the Tupac and Biggie murders, the John Benet Ramsey murder, and the JFK murder. Don't even get me started about that assassination and that conspiracy theory, but that's not the here nor there. In sports, there's not many stories that are considered conspiracy theories. Unless you're Brendan Schaub and you think what happened at UFC 279 was a true conspiracy, and I kind of believe him. And here's why. UFC 279 was considered to be Nate Diaz's swan song, his last fight in the UFC before he was to test free agency. It was going to be against the Chechen Ivan Drago himself, Khamzat Chimaev. Fight week came and it was probably the wackiest fight week we have ever seen since UFC 223, where that card got shuffled like a deck of cards, along with this one though. However, it all started during the press conference when Dana White abruptly ended it because there was some scuffling and skirmishes going backstage between Khamzat and his team, Nate Diaz and his team, and Kevin Holland and his team. They canceled the whole press conference, but the chaos was only beginning. When next day came around and it was Khamzat Chimaev's turn to weigh in, he weighed in 8 pounds over. Now that is horrible considering that the weight class that they have to make weight for is 170. The heaviest you can weigh is 171. He was 7.5 pounds over the required weight limit, basically not even trying. And he basically gave zero fucks about missing the weight.
I'm not bad.
Everyone was in shock and disbelief. People were wondering if there was even going to be a fight, if there was going to even be a main event. And the reason why Khamzat said he missed weight was because he was cutting the weight like he usually does, but then the doctor came in and told him to stop. Now, that is probably the first time I have ever heard any fighter, for that matter, say that they had a doctor come in and tell them to stop cutting weight. And that adds a lot of suspicion, if you really know what I mean, because again, that's almost unheard of and unprecedented. And many people had this to say when it comes to the treatment that Nate Diaz was getting, and this was Brendan Schaub's first eye-opening remark that truly makes you think that, hey, maybe there was some shady shit going on.
The UFC knows how a pay-per-view is going to do. They know how it's going to sell before the fights go live, before the first preliminary fight. Going into weigh-ins, they can see how it's trending, how it's tracking through all their promotions. They can usually tell.
Now, the part where Brendan said that the UFC tracks their pay-per-view numbers is exactly 100% true. Dana White has said it himself, how many pay-per-view numbers that a certain pay-per-view is already racking up. He's like, oh, it's on pace to get over 500K, over 200K, and that's like early in the week. He's done that. And ever since this event happened, he hasn't said a peep about potential pay-per-view numbers. Why is that? This was a fight that no one thought Nate Diaz would win whatsoever, and his fan base is super, super loyal. But they're also not stupid. They're also super, super real at the same time. I think they knew he was not going to win this fight whatsoever, and they saw it as a disservice by the UFC booking Nate against Khamzat, knowing he was going to lose.
No. You don't want to do this in your event. We overplayed our hand, man. We got to switch this up.
Friday morning was turning into Friday afternoon, and Friday afternoon was turning into Friday night. We finally got a fight card, and it was truly shuffled around unlike anything we have ever seen before. The card turned from this to this, if you didn't know. Everyone fought who they were supposed to on 24 hours notice. Li Jingliang, D-Rod, Khamzat Chimaev, Kevin Holland, Nate Diaz, Tony Ferguson. But what made this very interesting, and I think that a lot of people are ignoring, is the fact that Khamzat Chimaev missed weight and Dana White was totally okay with it. That is one of the main things that Dana White hates so damn much. Anthony Rumble Johnson missed weight a ton and got released from the UFC the first time because of it, rest his soul. John Jones popped for steroids and said he would never headline another UFC card again, but yet here he is headlining MSG later this November. It is one of the main things he hates. And why is Khamzat not being punished in a way? And you know how the UFC has their cold opens before every single pay-per-view to help you get hyped up for the upcoming fights for the main card? Well, Brendan had this to say for the cold open and as to the main reason why this card got shuffled around and why the press conference had to get shut down in the first place.
It was mayhem. It was crazy. People's heads were flying off. Freaking Khamzat freaking Spartan kicked Kevin Holland. Nate Diaz got involved. and then freaking Daniel Rodriguez, and then Tony was upset, and Nate was throwing things, and oh my God, we didn't have enough security. Right. Where's the footage?
I agree with Brennan 1,000,000%. What was so bad that they had to shut down the press conference for? This was not mayhem. This was not madness. This was not anything for the press conference to get shut down about. You know what was mayhem? Conor McGregor throwing monster cans at Nate Diaz. You know what was mayhem? Albeit it was in the public. Daniel Cormier and John Jones fighting during their face-off in front of random strangers. That was mayhem, and that definitely caused a certain press conference to get shut down. But this was absolutely nothing. This was the lightest of lightest things. It seemed to be broken up well by the UFC security, and in the end, Nate Diaz won the entire card. I know in retrospect, it all worked out for Nate Diaz. He went on to make a bag against Jake Paul. But nonetheless, Khamzat Chimaev hasn't fought since then. It'll be a year since he stepped into the octagon, and he'll be fighting Paulo Costa. And I'm pretty sure many people are rooting for Paulo Costa to sleep this man, because he easily ruined one of the most highly anticipated fights of 2022. As far as Brennan and his conspiracy theory goes, I feel like he made some good points that are probably true, but we'll never know for sure. But I think, yeah, there might be a little bit of a conspiracy going on behind this. And the UFC did everything in their power to cover their ass, which is totally okay, because in the end, I'm sure a ton of people bought it because of the favorable matchup for Nate Diaz and because of the bad blood that Khamzat and Kevin all of a sudden had. So in the end, like I said, it all worked out for everybody, and it's all water under the bridge 1 year later.